Okay, so I'm going to pick a question right off the top. This one came in from a long-time listener and very loyal fan, Jim Froling. Jim's question was, you heard recently that Google's John Mueller said that HTML tags went the way of meta descriptions and keywords, i.e. they don't factor into the search algorithm anymore. And I believe, rightly clarified, I did put a comment in for Jim that he's referring specifically to the kind of H tags, the kind of heading tags.
Yeah.
So there's two things for you, Marcus. Can you clarify that what John Mueller says, something that you've seen kind of play out? And then I guess bigger question from Jim is, what on-page signals are left besides great content that you think really have weight?
I mean, it's been several years since single factors like header tags had any kind of real, utility. The way we try to look at it more is that it's more about alignment. So, obviously your page title is still very important. Your meta description doesn't influence rankings, but it's still very important. Header tags are important. The body copy is important. The UX of the page is important. The internal navigation is important. It's that, your XML sitemaps, and it's making sure that the signal that you're sending about a given page is very, very clear. So it's about aligning all of the different, there's no silver bullet, there's no magical, these are probably the most common SEO question that we get, is this assumption that there is some kind of secret, and there is some kind of secret source there, but it really isn't. So obviously it's more than just quality content or great content, but that's very important. It's more about, the kind of the whole and getting everything to work together.
And are you getting it to work together from a point of view of appealing to Google in every way that's possible, even if that way doesn't actually make a huge impact? Or do you look at it from a kind of a tidiness perspective, having all the ducks pointing in the right direction? Or do you focus on the user's experience, both within the search results pages, like where the page description goes through to?
All of that, absolutely all of that, So obviously, say we were a plumber in Sutton Coldfield, and that plumber would offer various services. Maybe one of those services is a emergency, they offer a 24/7 emergency plumbing kind of service. So that page, obviously we need to look at the structure of the site. So we'll have the home page, and then we'll probably have a services page, which is, a kind of the drawer in the filing cabinet. Then we'll have a specific service page for that specific, service, again, which should say emergency plumbing services in Sutton Coldfield. So we're talking about the main service area, but also the actual service itself. Now we want all of the internal navigation to back that up. So we know that, so when Google looks at that page, the page is well named. When Google looks at the structure of the site and where that page sits within the structure, it makes sense. This is a service offered by this business that we understand, that we know operates in this given service area, and that's reinforced by what we're seeing on the actual, the URL stub itself, but also say the page title and the meta description. But then we also want to say that on the page itself, so that we're reiterating the same, the same clarity, not just to the search engine or to these kind of, algorithmic kind of, page analysis kind of systems, but to that user who lands on that page, who can look at it and say, yep, I'm in the right place. I need help very, very quickly. So, but also if you're an emergency plumber, that itself, that topic or subject will break down into smaller pieces. Maybe maybe you've got water flooding through the ceiling, or you've got, it's some other issue, but you want to also talk about those things or detail those other sub service areas, because not only does that allow you to appeal to to rank or get in front of people for a wider range of keywords, it also gives the person on the page the clarity that they're absolutely in the right place, and you can help them, with what it is they're looking to achieve. So, so when I talk about it being, everything kind of lining up, it's about, it's all of these small little things together that kind of, that add up to say, hey, we're sending a real clear signal here that this is what this page is about. This is what this business does. This is where they operate. You know, so it's clear to the search engine, but it's also clear to the user.
Okay, and do you find that, let's say for example, you go through that process and you've done it thoroughly, and you're happy with what it's set up, that actually you don't spend much time or any time kind of going back and making some of tweaks or adjustments, you know, to kind of H tags or the kind of meta description, in it to try and get more visibility?
Yeah, not as much as you would have done several years ago, where, you know, you'd see things like someone may have, you know, so here's a historic example of things that worked too well, probably. So for instance, you may have 2 or 3 different terms that all mean emergency plumber. So 24/7 plumber, emergency plumber, you know, whatever it may be. And because having very specific pages optimized around a single phrase works so well, you may find that people had several pages that were really logically the same thing, although there were just different ways to ask the same question. So over time, Google's got better at that, and Google understands, you know, topics and models things, and understands you don't even, you know, you can rank for variations on a topic without even having that on the page. Not to say that's a good strategy or something that you should be trying to do, but it just shows that Google's more advanced than it used to be, and having that kind of heavy duplication of kind of service pages that actually logically mean the same thing would probably work against you now. So yes, we may well continue to develop the content over time, or develop what's on the page to better target different language variations or different keyword variations or different ways to ask the same question. But you know, if you're doing good kind of solid keyword research, you should understand the topic, understand all the different ways somebody could ask that question, or the intent behind these search queries, understand the relative volume behind each one of those kind of search queries. And so you can use the data to inform the natural language you use on the site. So you still want it to be readable, and you still want it to, you know, to make sense to the user. You don't want it to read like some kind of, you know, awful sort of spammy page where you're just slamming your keywords in wherever possible, you know. But still, you can use lots of different natural language variations. So you know, but you generally hang that under the most popular or the highest volume or the best converting, you know, variation of that phrase. I mean,
I've got a question for you. So if you were taking over, a new client comes to you, historically they've got let's say 5 pages all related to a similar service.
Yeah.
Is your typical sort of plan to them to try and consolidate that as much as possible? And where do you kind of draw the lines between, like, okay, you know what, actually these 5 pages could be 1, or these 5 pages could be 3, based on, I don't know, the volume of keywords you're trying to target and the difference between those?
Well, intent is the answer, isn't it, really? You know, if the intent, if all of these things are exactly the same thing, sooner or later that is gonna, you know, it's gonna catch up with you. So we recently took over a site that was in a similar situation, and that targeted, say, 100 different areas, 10 different services, say. So each area had all of these 10. So we had thousands of pages. So instead of having 10 service pages and even 100 area pages, you know, we had 1,000, probably more, you know, pages for this site. Now, these pages, although very specific, you know, specific service in specific location, was slowly losing traction. So we've remodeled that site. We've set up a more traditional kind of, you know, multi-location service-based structure, where we'll have the hierarchy, will have a subset of location pages and a subset of service pages. We've trimmed the total amount of location pages because some of them were tiny little villages, places with, you know, no search volume whatsoever. So where we've got a more kind of a town, we've combined some of these pages in. So we've got a lower amount of overall location pages, a far lower amount, you know, service pages now, and we do interlink the service pages and the location pages now. So that's working really well, you know. And we see that quite often, you know. It's you.
What sort of traffic difference have you seen since you made that change?
I'd have to pull up analytics, but it's certainly going in the right direction. The rankings we were talking, this was a site that had, go back 3 years, they were kind of, you're talking sort of things like blocked drains location.
Mm-hmm.
So they were seeing what were traditionally strong local and organic rankings below the local sort of pack,
Mm-hmm.
sort of top 3 in both, dropping off the first page basically. So we're back in the kind of, in the local pack, we're back in the sort of top 3 organic. So, it's, some of these pages, they don't do tons and tons of visits. You're probably talking about, a couple of 100 visits a month, but for this business, that's, they're back where they're, turning down work rather than they had there's several sort of teams that they've got on the road, waiting for work to do. So.
And how do you, so it's 100 locations, it's pretty broad. You've kind of culled some of those, you've trimmed it down. Did you do much work around sort of link building, for example? Or how much of the improvement in their traffic do you put down to the reorganization of the structure?
Okay, it's a good question actually. So imagine we've got this same site and we've got 1,000 pages, and all of these 1,000 pages are struggling. So if we are going to try and do some link building, we've got, we can only hit the kind of common kind of, the home page, or we can't build links to 1,000 pages or the right kind of anyway. So by condensing it down to several service pages and a much smaller set of location pages, we can do some link building specifically to those service pages which tend to rank. So we have a much smaller set of pages that we can, I'm very much a big fan of one variable sort of changes, measuring the results. So we restructured the site first, waited till we started to see things moving in the right direction again before we did any kind of link or authority work. And really, that's for these kind of local businesses, it's a small part of what we do.
Yeah,
it's often, it's not needed to any great degree. I mean, obviously it depends. Different industries are more competitive. If you've got industries where they're highly competitive in paid search as well, then these industries can be a little bit more competitive. But for your average, sort of small business categories, often we don't need a ton of links. But as I was sort of saying, we'll tend to do this kind of detailed situation analysis, or like an SEO kind of SWOT analysis. We want to look at the competitors in each individual location. We want to understand, okay, well, why isn't this ranking? Is it authority, or is it that you've got this crazy kind of like, doorway page, kind of highly duplicated sort of pages set up? You've really got to do the kind of, the research before you can decide what the specific strategy is for each job.
I've got a question about how you see. So you've got a set of service pages and then a separate set of location pages. Yep. In your mind, if you could, which has more value, which has more potential to rank?
It depends again, unfortunately. It always depends, doesn't it? It's the stock SEO answer, unfortunately. I tend to see that the location pages will rank in localized search results better. It depends, and again, that answer depends upon whether you're talking about a business with a single Google My Business or GMB account covering a wide area with what, a location page is really an area that they physically cover, or whether that's a business with, say, 20 or 30 or 100 or 1,000 physical other locations, and they're tied into the GMB account as well. So again, it depends a little bit, but it generally tends to be the location pages that will rank. So it's these pages that you want to try and make, unique and valuable to that specific location. I mean, it ties into, how do you make truly valuable or unique location pages for multi-location businesses? And it's a question with lots and lots of answers, but I tend to think that more you can create, I don't want to say quality content or unique content because it's just such a cliche, but maybe, if you've got a business that okay, so we work with a specialist, a plastering company, and there's lots and lots of plasterers out there, and the majority of them are a man with a van. These guys are not. They're really specialists. They focus on kind of big properties, Victorian properties. They do great work. So we help them develop case studies specific to the kind of projects that they do, and use those case studies on the 3 locations that they cover. So this helps not only drive far better engagement rates on the page and conversion rates, it helps also to make those location pages more interesting. So you've got someone who's looking for a specialist plasterer. And again, it just comes back to this this idea of really trying to make the page useful and unique, and to stand out, and really thinking about it from the user's perspective. If you can go back to what the actual, the needs and thoughts of the customer behind the problem or the objective, then figuring out what you need to do gets a whole lot easier. I mean, and do that without technology in the way. Just try and think about that customer, think about the messaging. I mean, this is, we try to offer what I consider a kind of holistic approach. We're not just about helping you rank for a specific keyword. There's no point ranking for that keyword if that page doesn't get clicked. And there's no point getting those clicks if that page doesn't convert to inquiries. So we try and take this kind of like like a sort of sales or marketing funnel approach to it. Or we want to, but what we find is by doing these lower funnel engagement and conversion type tactics, often that feeds back into the rankings and helps the page perform anyway. So, it's hard to look at it in isolation anymore, just on page or just, link building. It's I think things are getting a little bit more complicated.
I've got one final question around the I guess the relationship between, let's say, service pages and locations. And let's say you've got that phenomenon or that scenario where it's a business of one location, they've got 10 services, but they want to be ranking for a whole sort of wider locations. And if it's the location pages that you think, actually, those are the ones that are eventually going to get the visibility, you're still creating the sort of service pages. How do you structure, I guess, the linking between those two so that the service pages carry some value over to the location pages in terms of the sort of service relevance?
Again, it generally depends upon scale. And are you talking about 100 pages in total, or a site with 10 pages in total, or 1,000, or 100,000, or 1 million?
Let's maybe go that with, let's say, 50 pages, which might cover off the majority of sort of small business sites.
Yeah. So if it's 50 pages, then generally you will have the majority of those pages linked from every other page. So for instance, you may have a mega menu that links to all of the different locations. You may even just have a drop-down location menu that links to your primary locations, and then they in turn link to the sub-locations. But there's lots of different ways to link things together. And it may be, again, maybe you operate in the UK and you target all of the major cities, but and you've got too many cities there to have like some kind of hellish menu with hundreds of links. Then you would probably link to the most popular ones, London, Birmingham, all of these different areas that are probably going to do 80% of the business anyway on every page. And you may then have other kind of on-page elements that where your top 5 cities or your top 5 towns, or you've got to again look at it from a kind of a real world business perspective, which you can reflect through kind of search volume often, or conversion rates, or where those customers are coming from, and figure out a kind of a hierarchy that works. And again, you can test that pretty simply with a tool like Screaming Frog, or whatever your kind of popular kind of crawling tool that you want to use is, and check the unique links to individual pages, and make sure that with Screaming Frog you can crawl a site, you can look at the unique links to an individual page, you can order the results by that, and if you see that the pages with the most links are the pages that you care the most about, then then you probably, you're in pretty good shape, or at least as you're making those changes, particularly on wide scale kind of CMSs or larger sites, you don't want to be manually clicking around those pages and trying to count the links. You want to be kind of crawling trying to get a handle on it that way. So it always depends, but for instance, we picked up another business recently that had about 20 locations. The location,
actual physical locations,
but there were big areas that they covered as well. But anyway, they've got a big site, 1,000+ pages. But the location pages, which are the primary pages for organic search or local search as well, they were only linked from a single page. So from a internal link equity perspective, those pages were, they were starving. So as soon as we just added links to all of the major location pages in the primary navigation and on the footer, did some kind of horizontal linking as well. Again, they saw massive improvements just from not even changing anchor text or anything daft like that. It was just purely from making sure that those pages were better reflected in the internal kind of link hierarchy, which I always like the common sense kind of things that make sense. If you've got a site and you've got 100 pages on your site, and some of those pages are linked, 10 of those pages are linked from all 100 pages, we're saying to Google, hey, these are super important pages. We're linking to these from everywhere, so your most important pages need to have, a good amount of links.
Yeah. Okay, brilliant. Thanks, Marcus. Let's jump over into the kind of question module. Okay, so this one's from Megan. It's got 5 upvotes. I guess it's, please share examples of on-site SEO that directly impacts local rankings. So let's I guess understand. Let's say we're talking about the local pack here. Yeah. If you wanted to get one of your clients into the local pack that wasn't already in there, what would you do on page for them and on site for them to get that those locations ranking in the pack?
I'd say that probably, unfortunately, on page has a part to play. It's very hard to split it out from citations or local links and everything else. But
sure.
So that caveat, I'd first do a kind of situation analysis. You can't look at these things in complete isolation. You have to understand, what do the competitors look like? Where as an example, where I live, Birmingham, UK second city, big place. So if you're a plumber or you're a kitchen showroom, if I search for a kitchen showroom, the majority of the results that I see are within a mile, half a mile. They're pretty close. So first, you've got to do this almost feasibility kind of study. Are you miles away from Birmingham? Is this actually doable? If it is doable, then you've got to do a kind of, a basic kind of SEO audit. You need to make sure that, you've got a technically sound platform first, that you've got that Google can crawl and understand the site. You've got to look at all of these other external factors like Google My Business and citations and everything else. But then once you get down to the page itself, I'd be looking at ways to make that page better or more unique or more valuable than competing pages. But you've got to make sure it's feasible first, and you've got to make sure those other elements are in place, or it's very tough. But then let's say
it is feasible. What are the sort of the things that you would absolutely want to see that page have within itself, or within the sort of site structure? Just if you would if the client said to you, I've got to get this page ranking, this is absolutely kind of critical for my business, what would be your sort of certain things that you'd absolutely have to make happen?
We do our kind of traditional on-page audit. I mean, if you want a tool for these kind of, things, I think the Moz on-page grader is still pretty cool. It tends to be regularly updated with regards to, what's the latest kind of, feelings with regards to what, I mean, we have our own internal audit process where we'll check page titles and we'll make sure all of our keywords are in the content, and we'll make sure that, the address is in the footer and all of these absolute, kind of foundational basics. but that tool's kind of useful, but it's very hard to give an exact specific example for that without seeing a site and figuring out where it is. And I'm not a huge fan of generic answers, because I just don't think they've got a lot of utility.
Okay. But you would go through a similar sort of deep audit process, making sure that you got all the kind of basic boxes ticked. Might use a tool to kind of monitor and identify other additional sort of areas. I mean, how much is you talked about competitive analysis when you're looking at kind of competitors, and you're trying to essentially, outdo them and rank above them. What are the sort of things you're hoping to do better than they do?
It comes back to this SWOT analysis again. I want to understand. Well, we have an internal audit process, which is literally a spreadsheet, and it covers all of your major kind of areas, even from kind of analytics and search console through to on page, local, all of these kind of. And really, the idea with this is it's to do a quick, to run through all of these kind of ranking factors to get an idea of where are the strengths and the weaknesses. What's is the site fast and well hosted? Is it mobile responsive? Is it there's we go through all of these specific factors, and that allows us then to understand the relative strengths and weaknesses of that individual site. But then we've got to do that in relation to the competitors as well. So you'll tend to get, I suppose, you've got two ends of a spectrum. You can have a highly authoritative site that's right exactly where we physically need it to be to rank for those kind of terms, but that's technically an absolute shambles, that's slow, that's not mobile responsive, that's that's not well optimized, that has terrible UX, that's just it's just a terrible site, but it would look from an authority and history perspective that it's got everything in place that it needs. And then you can have these sites, people who come and they build a site and they do absolutely everything right from purely from the site in isolation, yet they haven't got any of those external factors in place, so they haven't got any citations, or the citations have got problems, or they're running multiple businesses from a single address, or they've got no link authority, and the competitors have been around for ages, or they're brand new upstart just trying to kind of muscle their way into the rankings, and you've got competitors that have been there for sort of 10, 15 years. So there's so many variables that I think you really have to dive in and understand. Particularly, I think I've got a post out there somewhere on an SEO SWOT analysis.
Okay, is that on your site?
I think it's on Search Engine Land.
Okay, all right. We'll get Jamie and Steph to kind of jump in and sort of share that.
It's okay. It's not a cop-out answer, although it sounds like a cop-out answer. But the best way to understand the path to success is to understand what are your own weaknesses and what can you improve, and what are the strengths and weaknesses of your competitors, so you can understand, so you can ensure that you're, all of these kind of major kind of areas, on page, usability, site speed, you want to be better than them from all of these perspectives. But also, again, if you're physically further away from this centroid or this address that someone's searching for, or this main area, you're at a disadvantage. So you have to do everything better than those other people. So it's you've got to understand the situation.
Do you take a sort of methodical step-by-step implement, wait, observe approach in terms of how you implement stuff, in terms of improvements to a site, or do you just try and do it all as well as possible? So you kind of throw everything in the kitchen sink to make an improvement, or do you go, let's take this in steps? So here's a priority set of improvements, implement, wait, learn, then go to phase 2 and a sort of phase 3?
Yeah, a bit of both. For instance, we've just taken over a campaign for it's a kitchen company or kitchen showroom company. They've got 15 or so locations. The website's a nightmare. Everything that could possibly be wrong with it is wrong with it. So in that case, we're doing a little bit of a kind of kitchen sink with that one, like particularly from the perspective of the site. So we're rebuilding the site from scratch. It's not this kind of more kind of analytical, last 20% kind of stuff. But once we've done with that, then we will take a more kind of procedural approach where we're looking for this kind of continual improvement. And this is where, we may do some kind of like authority building to specific location pages, and we want to wait a month to see if that's had a, an impact, or, what the way we tend to work. Well, we have our own kind of methodology, basically, like our own kind of sales or sort of, marketing methodology that we call REP, which is basically, you're nothing in digital marketing if you haven't got a 3-layer acronym. That's what kind of thing. But REP sort of stands for reach, is it's your target market, your messaging and your platforms. E, educate, is your landing pages, content and remarketing. P, persuade, is reputation and conversion optimization, and A/B testing. So SEO kind of falls into that.
Okay.
Lost my thread a bit.
That's all right. That sounds. I mean, you had to kind of recount all that stuff. I'm glad you could remember what REP was. Didn't you? Yeah, but it's good. So you've I guess anyone out there who is sort of starting out or quite new, how important is it for you as a business, particularly when looking at things like, I guess, sort of on-site SEO? How important is it for you to have a well-documented, understood set of processes that you can work through for each client, so that you do it in an economical way for yourselves, but you deliver results and you leave no stone unturned? Yeah,
sorry, that's what I was going with that. Very important, basically. So our audit process is always the first step. So from the audit process, we tend to work out a plan. Now, the plan will obviously have things that we do monthly, because the majority of our customers are kind of, they're a monthly recurring customer. But we tend to work in kind of what we call strategic 3-month blocks. So after the end of 3 months, we'll do a strategic review. These were our goals or our KPIs for this, for this. This was our kind of hypothesis, what we thought would change, and these are the things that we were looking to see improvements in. So then we can measure that, and then we can decide. Generally we'll have a relatively well scratched out 12-month plan. But after the first 3 months, if something did work or didn't work, or something worked better than we thought it would, we can, the kind of like lean, agile type approach where we'll just discard things that aren't working very well and focus on things that are. So you've got to be kind of go back 20 years. I literally had a notepad document called SEO Blueprint, and it had a specific set of steps that you could do for every single site that you worked on, and they would rank. And it was just that simple. But it's just not that simple anymore. It's way more competitive. It's the competition is way more robust. It's a moving target because everybody's working on the same things at the same time. So,
but it's helpful to have to know what you would like to do in a typical case scenario, but then be adaptable and flexible based on what sort of is echoed back for you from performance.
We use Asana for project management, and in Asana we have default projects or blocks, basically. So we have roadmaps for local SEO, roadmaps for authority building, right? And those break down into these other little roadmaps. So as we build a project, we pull in all of these building blocks. And
okay.
So we know what we've got to do for each project from there. So, and again, we have to once we've pulled in that template, we then have to kind of work with that and refine it as we go. But we have that kind of 80% of the way there, kind of roadmap. Tells us what the job's for.
I hear great things about Asana. I've never used it, but actually, I think you're probably the 5th person I've spoken to this year. Out of, let's say, 10 conversations, who's brought it up. So there's got to be
really powerful, and they're introducing new features all the time, and it's affordable, as opposed to, and it's particularly where you've got multiple teams and everything else. So it's a good tool. Yeah.
Okay. Fantastic. Okay. Thanks, Marcus. Let's go next question. Okay, we talked about some on-page optimization tactics, special local search. We answered Megan's question. Okay, this comes from Kristen. It says, should I add location-specific pages to my website, or is it better to purchase separate domains for different locations?
I think Google's pretty clear on that you should have a single site. That information has been echoed over the years, or as few sites as possible. You can probably find that if you Googled it in the webmaster guidelines. You can get yourself in a real mess with multiple sites. You're creating way more work for yourself. If you have got to do link building or authority building, you've got to do that. You need to have really, for them to have any hope in local search, they all need to have their own physical location. So yeah, I'd have to have a very strong case for someone to have multiple sites. And in fact, we often get inquiries from people who've got several sites, and they're losing traction, and they don't want to move away from those sites. And often we probably won't take the work, because unless you can try and link build your way out of that kind of hole, or there's things you could do to probably slow things down. But I just think it's just, you've got to sooner or later move to best practice, and there's still a lot of people out there that are stuck basically based on things that have worked historically, and are slowly, gradually losing traction. The way I think about it sort of personally is it's hard enough to do one site well. So, having several is just, you're SEO masochist and enjoy pain. That's,
Fair enough. Okay, thanks, Marcus. Let's go to the next question, which comes from Luke Hancock. Is there local SEO value in having your servicing zip codes, which we call postcodes in the UK, on your landing page, as if you're a service area business?
Yeah, I think so, because Google knows your postcode. They also know the postcode of the person conducting the search. At the bottom of my browser now, if I conduct a Google search, it will tell me that I'm in B73. So I don't think that many people now search and specifically enter a postcode. But unless you're going to put 500 on the page or something, I think it just provides a little. It's all about, again, comes back to this kind of signal thinking. We're sending a clear signal. This is a postcode that we target, and also as long as your service area is set to cover all of those postcodes, again, you've got all of these disparate parts that are kind of working together to kind of send the same overall message. So yeah, I don't think it's a problem.
But you think there is a limit to how many? It becomes a sort of inaccessible list.
Yeah, I mean, you still see these sites, don't you? They're still out there, and there's where you've got 100 postcodes at the bottom, or 500 location pages. So it can get spammy, but there's ways to mitigate that as well, particularly with postcodes, where you can just use the first section, or D7, or you can kind of use So as long as you're being sensible with it, I think it's one of those could help, won't hurt. So it's
but there is a limit to it. And in the US, obviously, they haven't got the sort of split postcode situation that we have. So each zip code is kind of unique to itself.
Again, a lot of these questions, a lot of this kind of thinking often comes from people who are. I think it's natural to want to target as wide an area as possible. So you're a plumber or whatever it may be, and when local search often shows people who are very close to you, and it will vary by geography or service or keyword or whatever it may be. But if you're trying to rank outside of the kind of outside of that the radius that Google tends to show results for in that area, then it's probably not going to have a ton of utility. But it's one of those. Again, this would be one that we'd experiment with and measure the results and see if it had any utility. As long as you're sensible with it and you're being realistic about the geographical area that you can probably rank within for local search, then it won't hurt. If you're using it in an effort to try and rank wildly for a wide range of locations, then probably not so much.
Do you tend to, when you have conversations with clients, and all businesses are ambitious, right? All businesses want to do well. Most businesses want to kind of grow and expand their kind of presence and reach and revenue, and often that it encompasses expanding to kind of wider geographical areas. Do you quite often have conversations with clients where you have to they come with you with wild ambitions about just how broad a geography they can kind of cover, and you have to go, look, we could try this, but it won't work. So let's pick the sweet spot.
Yeah, I mean, maybe every other conversation, particularly in relation to SEO. So it's I think you're better to do the research and be realistic about what you can achieve with with local search or organic search, whatever it may be, and then to look at other tactics sometimes, and you have to go beyond that, paid search or whatever it may be.
Okay, and I mean, is it? If, say, for example, a business does well, let's say they establish themselves firmly in Birmingham, and then they want to expand out because actually they're looking to kind of grow, but they've already got a good bedrock of kind of SEO sort of performance.
Yeah.
Do you then think, actually, you know what, these guys can grow, these guys can
it depends. Have they got another physical location? What is the business category? How do the search results utilize? How do people search for these services? So it always depends. We have a customer that only has one physical office right in central, in the Midlands, but they have and they only have one Google My Business, but they have pages for they do kind of mobile phone repair. So they've got these vans, and these vans roll up at your house, and they have their location pages in this kind of hierarchical structure that goes to UK, and then the major counties, and then the cities, then the towns. Those pages localize. So they're not in the local pack, but they're in the localized organic results for all those cities and towns for like mobile phone repair. So even if the person is not searching mobile phone repair, location, also service location, they're just physically in that location. The localized organic results show those pages. So they have a highly authoritative site, Google My Business page set to cover the entire country, and these location pages, not location pages mapped or connected with a GMB profile that localize. So, but not all industries do that. So again, you've got to do that kind of research piece and figure out what the results look like and what's practical. It's kind of initial feasibility study.
What does that site do well then? Why do you think they've been particularly successful at getting like localized organic rankings?
It's just that industry. There's certain things that happen with some industries that don't happen with others.
Right. Okay.
A lot of variation. You can't take one rule or something that works for dentists and try and apply it to carpet shops or whatever. I mean, you could several years ago. The same kind of rules applied, but not now. It's things are a little different.
Right. Okay. Brilliant. Thanks, Marcus. Let's jump over to the question section. Where are we? Okay, we have Luke's question. Jim's question. This comes from someone known as MF. He says, "Is there a better way to go for neighborhoods, being American, I guess, rather than large metro areas? So if you wanted to, if you weren't, let's say, you weren't trying to tackle the entire of Birmingham, but there's a specific large, particularly kind of well-targeted neighborhood, could be affluent, could be something sort of specific to your business. How might you go about, focusing on that for a customer?"
We've got a customer in America, in New York and Jersey or New Jersey, who does something very similar. They have 3 locations where these are covering, physical locations, GMB pages that are covering a massive geographical area. And then they have
how big? Within a state or sort of
entire state? Yeah, an entire state. So there'd be maybe 100 neighborhoods underneath each one of these pages.
Right. Okay.
And they have these individual neighborhood location pages underneath, which sit in the hierarchy. So you'll have an areas page, then you'll have the metro kind of area, then underneath that you'll have these 100 or so kind of broke down individual pages. So it's in a sensible hierarchy, so we can understand the kind of parent-child relationship between the two. And those pages perform really, really well. So it's so they kind of auto localize, but it seems that I'd have to check really whether those results auto localize or whether it's for people searching for service plus location. But certainly, yeah, those pages that they perform well. So
Okay.
to answer the question, I guess do the research first and see what it kind of looked like. See if you can rank a single page that could just mentions these locations. If those locations themselves generate enough search traffic and warrant it, then break those locations down into individual pages of their own. There'll be a degree of detail that you need to go down to, you know, and it's just how far do you need to go. But yeah, you've got to kind of do the research and figure it out. But generally, we'd have this kind of physical metro area that relates to the GMB page and the service area, and then these individual location pages that sit underneath.
And how did you? Okay, I guess kind of going back with a scale of pages like that. And let's say it's a mobile phone repair sort of business. You're going to have a bunch of kind of generic service pages.
Yeah.
iPhone repair, sort of Samsung repair.
Yeah.
Then obviously got all the location pages. You can't possibly cross-link each service page to each neighborhood page.
No.
Do you cross-link to the metro page? The
metro
most important neighborhoods?
Yeah. So again, you've got to figure out that hierarchy. So the metro page would probably link to the Samsung page, but the Samsung page would probably break down into the individual Samsung models. And again, much like the 80-20 rule is super useful in these kind of situations. In the 80% of the repairs will be 20% of the phone models, so you can understand the most important pages within this big sprawling hierarchy, still cover the spread, but ensure that the majority of internal links go to the most popular phones or the most popular services or the most popular locations.
Right.
That works.
Yeah.
A bit more asynchronous, that one is, in that there'll certainly be, the locations are the locations, and there'll still be ones that are more important than others. However, the phones themselves will be, majority iPhone or majority, all those hundreds and hundreds of models. It'll be a handful probably that do the majority of the business. Okay,
great. Okay, thanks, Marcus. We've got just over 10 minutes left, so let's go and pick up the next question. This is one from Amanda. She says, what are the newest trends that we should be looking out for? And I guess it could be generally anything to do with local. You don't have to kind of keep it about sort of on-site, but anything on-site. Is there anything new that's come to light in the kind of research or the sort of studies that you've been doing, or is it essentially more of the same but a narrowing of how you might focus?
I think it's just evolution. It's just slow, gradual evolution. The strive towards quality. I mean, I guess the whole kind of YMYL, your money or your life kind of factors and EAT factors are more important in industries than others. So financial advisors, people like that, they seem to be more bound to having more kind of rigorous proof and fact checking. I think again that affects certain kind of more kind of content marketing efforts. I mean, things have to be more rigorous now. It was very easy to write what looked like a good article and to do some authority building around an article. But now, if you are in one of these more sensitive areas, financial or health based, then you are subject to far more rigorous fact checking, which again is, it makes sense. I think, Google has a kind of duty of care there to ensure that they're not churning out, financially ruinous advice or, advice that could really impact someone's health. So I think there's a lot of things to be learned. The strive is always towards quality and proof, for Google to really want trust that you are who you say you are and that you do what you say you'll do, and that everything is aligned so that your team page links to your individual team members, which links to their LinkedIn pages and mentions their qualifications, and that so Google could understand this kind of web of the real world kind of, what was that one phrase they had a few years back? Things, not strings. I think Google's kind of modeling the real world and trying to do some kind of fact checking to their results as well now. So it's not just so I mean, again, but this kind of loops back, doesn't it, to to the things that work well from a conversion and an on-page perspective often improve your SEO. So if you're a member of the Guild of Master Craftsmen, you want to be linking to your profile there, you want to be talking about it, you want to be telling the people on the pages or the location pages, whatever they are on your site, that hey, we're really good at this. Look at all of our accreditations and awards or members of whatever kind of trade bodies we are. It's about common sense type things that so you're mapping the real world and proving that you are you're a good guy.
How do you so obviously with the the money of your life kind of update and that needing to be really good sort of sources of authority and truth and to be validated around that, do you see obviously kind of Google moving in that direction? Obviously it targeted that industry because they're quite sensitive and the impact wrong information could be quite big. Do you think actually we'll start to see those types of requirements or moves in Google move into other industries where they are the bar of authority and is higher across the board?
I think it already is to some extent, and I think it's wrong to say that if you look at the quality the quality reviewer guidelines, whatever they're called, these documents that these internal Google testers use to try and, I think it's wrong to say that those things specifically are ranking factors, but I think you always want to be striving towards where the algorithm's going, what Google's trying to achieve, rather than trying to chase specific algorithmic factors or little kind of hacks or quick wins. You always want to be striving for quality, but within the still doing everything, the basics or the fundamental basics, but striving for quality. So I think if you review those guidelines, particularly the section on high quality content and the characteristics of low quality sites and the characteristics of high quality sites, if you can look at your site honestly and work through all of those sections, then generally I think you'll find many things you can improve. I mean, the one thing we see most often is that I don't think I've ever seen a site where someone's done everything possible, from everything sensible. And I think it's really hard to do that for your own website. I think this is where a consultant or a third-party company or someone who can look at your site critically and think like a customer provides a value that you can something you can never do for yourself. So certainly something we can't even do for ourselves.
Yeah, that's good advice.
It's our new website's been in development for 3 years because I'm too critical.
You're too close to it. It's too personal.
You
can't see the faults.
No.
Let's try and answer a few more questions before we wrap up. So it comes from Yvette. It says, so I have to read it very quickly to kind of just to interpret it. It says, it seems that there's a recent Google update, got a broad core algorithm update that hit about a week ago, has been kind of rolling out. Actually been some quite large impact in local search results. Actually, our local rank flux tool saw some of the highest spikes in ranking fluctuation, I think around Friday. I think the highest that we've seen even from the last big kind of local focused update back in November. Have you seen any kind of particular kind of industries or businesses sort of affected by that positively or negatively?
I don't have a good answer for that, if I'm perfectly honest. We've got our guys looking at some things at the moment. We have one site that someone we work with, they're like a kind of online coach, and they're not a local site, so they target the entire country. And they seem to have had lost quite a lot of traffic and haven't done anything. Certainly there's no kind of dodgy link building or any of these kind of tactics there, but I suspect it's more of a kind of EAT type Whale type impact, in that it's more kind of quality orientated and that people are giving advice, and it's so that's not a local business as such. But the majority of the businesses that we've got, we haven't seen any major impact yet, but it's early days really, so I don't have a good answer at the moment.
Guys have just shared a link to some analysis that Rosie, who heads up our research, I think put out today, in fact, which basically analysed industry by industry, some of the local sort of ranking flux data. A bit of a spoiler, it seems that almost every single industry was affected and seen significant rankings, more fluctuation than we typically see, except for hotels and restaurants. That actually fluctuates the most out of any industry anyway, than their kind of local pack. So that's quite a good, useful sort of breakdown and analysis provided by Rosie for that particular question. Okay, let's try and get a couple more kind of questions in. This question from Brad Simeonis. How valuable are backlinks to individual city pages?
Yeah, they can be very valuable. This is one of those things that we would do last. So, if we're happy that everything is done and that page is, again, this comes back briefly to that kind of situation analysis, that making sure that you are happy out of all of those competing pages, your page is better. Very hard to define what better is here, but it's not, it means UX or information from a customer perspective, what the customer needs to achieve their goals. Your page is better than those other pages. If you've done absolutely everything else, then yes, some individual, low volume kind of linking to those city pages can kind of help. And again, that can be sponsoring a local football team, or there's you've got to look at the specific industry and figure out how you're going to get that link. It's got to be a real link. You don't want to be just throwing some spammy kind of link at those pages, because sooner or later that will drop away, and it's a bit of a hamster wheel approach. But they can help a lot.
Yeah. And so why do you put that at the tail end of all the other work?
Because you want to make sure that you want the page to be as valuable as it can be. You don't want to prop up. I mean, one of the things I have read about this recent update is that sites that were propped up by links rather than on-page quality factors have seen some impact. So if you look at what a lot of street level kind of SEO companies do, it's mainly link building. They'll optimize your page titles and maybe drop a couple of keywords on the page, call it good, and then just build links. Now, as Google gradually catches up and devalues those links, or they devalue naturally over time, then you kind of it's shaky foundations. You want to make sure that page is as strong as it can possibly be, and then the links are the icing on the cake. Yeah. But again, I wouldn't use that in isolation. It would be used in combination with some digital PR and some kind of guest posts that maybe link to kind of more in-depth resources on the site, and it's they're a light.
Okay. Fair enough. Let's get one final question, and then we'll wrap this up. There are some really long questions here. How quick and how can I interpret them? How would you create an HTML sitemap for a business? Would you use a plugin or just paste 10 to 15 links in the footer? What are the kind of boxes you have to tick for kind of sitemaps?
I wouldn't create a HTML sitemap, probably. If you've only got 10 to 15, pardon?
Any type of sitemap?
XML sitemaps, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well structured, or kind of, and again, I tend to defer to using a tool like, WordPress SEO on WordPress. It's going to automatically make that sitemap for you. But if you've only got, sorry. Yeah, if you've only got 10 or 15 links, your navigation is going to link to all of those pages anyway. So there's really no kind of SEO benefit from that sitemap. If there's a user benefit to having a sitemap page, but again, with that small amount of pages, not really. And then your XML sitemap is going to help Google understand the structure and the hierarchy and the taxonomies and everything else of the page and the site anyway. So, I just focus on making sure you've got a good user-friendly navigation that's crawlable, basically. So I wouldn't go out of my way to create a sitemap.
Okay. That was a quicker answer than I thought. So let's maybe see if there's one final question. Are you okay to hang on, Marcus? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Let me see if I can read someone else. This one's from Craig. Is it okay for a professional services business with only one location to have city pages. An example would be an accounting firm that's outside of a major city, but wants to rank for that city and its surrounding suburbs. I guess probably talking about localized organic here, given that we know actually it's almost impossible to rank within a pack if you are a certain distance away from the searcher.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'd try probably first like mentioning those. Again, it depends on scale. I'd maybe try, you could almost have something in the footer of the site first that's, we cover so and so and so and so, and mention those several areas there in the text of the page or on the service pages first, and try doing some basic on-page optimization around those locations on the service pages and on the home page first. Don't have, if that doesn't perform, then yeah, probably create some kind of city pages that sit underneath, an areas covered page, and then again see how those perform. Interlink those with your service pages, so people can see that you provide service X in location Y. But incrementally first, try and do it with on-page optimization and create those pages only if necessary, and where it makes it makes sense to the person conducting the search. Is there a variation? Some services vary by location, the amount of time you need to get to that person or whatever it may be. So try and kind of, try and think about it from the user's perspective and sprinkle over the SEO rather than, trying to think, okay, the problem with this approach is it can work quite well, but it can also be very addictive. And then you can start to think, okay, well, we'll create another 10 location pages and another 10 location pages. And then you can start to see, a decrease in results. You've just got to be practical sometimes about what can be achieved within. So that feasibility study is always useful. And generally, the best answer to that question is simply conducting a Google search for those cities, see what the other people are. Are they location pages? Are they, see what those pages are, see what it looks like out there, and think, okay, well, yeah, we can have a slice of that as well, and just do some experimentation. You can always take a page down if you're not happy with it or you don't think it's adding value.
Yeah. Final question from me, just to kind of reiterate on that last question, that follow on. So let's say you had 10 target suburbs. Would you just, and you said, the initial on-page optimization didn't have the impact you hoped. Would you launch one page for one suburb, do all the kind of tick all the boxes in terms of on-site optimization, then maybe build some links, see the impact before you went on to the second, third, fourth, fifth pages?
Yeah, we might do
kind of prove the concept.
2 or 3 first. I mean, that other American company I was just talking to you about, they already had a bunch. They wanted to target somewhere else. We built them, like 10 at a time, started to make sure that they were ranking and performing, and then as we add more pages, also measure if there's any kind of negative impact on the existing pages as well. So yeah, softly catch the monkey.
Yeah. Any kind of rule of thumb? You talk about not too many, so this process might work up to a point, at which point maybe you've got too many pages and it starts to degrade the ranking of all of them. Any kind of sort of sense of rule of thumb? How do you know if you've gone too far?
The location that you're in, it's very hard to apply that because some businesses can have hundreds and some might only be able to get away with a handful. Again, I'd say look at those kind of the way that the search results are localized. I mean, I guess the best way to answer that is if you go back in time again, and service plus location keyword searches were massive because Google can auto-localize things very well, very well. Now, sometimes, so even like a service like, say, artificial grass, Birmingham, it won't even do 1% of the volume of just the keyword artificial grass. People don't search by location anymore in the same way because we've become trained by the search engine to know that we'll get local results anyway. So if those results are auto localizing in those locations, you may not get what you're looking for here.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, we'll end it there.